Latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Strategies Global. Hello, I'm Surya Gangadharan. Nepal, harsh realities, stark uncertainties. That's the theme of our chat this evening. My guest is Major General Binoj Basnyat, formerly of the Nepal Army. He is presently a strategic affairs analyst with Rangsit University in Thailand. In fact, he's speaking to us from Thailand, from Bangkok. So, welcome. Glad to have you again.
Yeah, thank you, Surji. Thank you for having me.
Sir, we have a new government in Nepal, one bringing together the entire red flock, so to speak, on one platform. What is your reading of this government and the manner in which it was formed? And more to the point, you think this will last?
Okay, let me answer the second half of your question first
Okay.
and go to the first half later. So the answer is, to be blunt as a soldier, no, it will not last. Okay, so Prachanda came into the reign with mainly three flanks. Okay, one is desperation and doubts. So the Nepal Communist Party, the Maoist center, the status of their political party in the 2006 elections for the constitutional elections after the comprehensive peace agreement was 220 seats out of 575.
Yeah.
Then in 2013, it went to 80. Then now, in 2022, they have 34 in the FPTP and 18 in the proportional representations to 52 in 2022.
Yeah.
And the second is the coalition with the Nepali Congress after the Supreme Court's promulgated for the promulgation of Sherbadur Dewa being the Prime Minister, and the constitution, which was discussed as and argued about the constitutional arrangements. So, and the third is, it was, Prachanda defected from the electoral alliance, fearing of not being the prime minister, and formed a coalition with the rival, UML, and ideologically unlike newly formed Rashtriya Swatantra Party, and the pro-Hindu, pro-monarch Rashtra Prajanta Party, both that oppose major political shifts. And the second point that I should raise now is to give you a qualified strategic picture. One is the geopolitical factor. So the Nepal's strategic positioning and the expansions of China's interest in South Asian region and the attempts of political influence in Nepal. So India's approach from China's angle and the rivalry of US and China. Second is the political system against Nepal's character and the Nepalese behavior. Third is the political instability versus national stability. And the fourth is the diplomatic setback, or the approaches that has occurred diplomatically in an immature way that is paving way for an unprecedented discourse. And the other point I would like to raise is, now, why is all this happening? Why is all this happening? So what is the background of the political, economic, and the political security environment of Nepal? So one would be the Nepal Communist Party Maoist raising arms against a democratic system in 1996, which I think is a strategic miscalculation. And we can argue about this. There are a lot of yes and no's, but that is what I personally feel. Second is the suspicion of trust deficit amongst the monarchy and the political parties in power then was Nepali Congress, and the Prime Minister was Girija Prasad Koirala, which led to the rise of the conflict. Okay. Third is the 12-point agreement that happened in Delhi, or rather the government of Delhi, the day government in Delhi, which had a left support, leading to extra-regional powers' interest, as well as came up with a strategic, it did not come out with a strategic strategy, the strategic exit strategy, how to successfully complete the peace or the 12-point agreement's agendas. And the other is the Comprehensive Peace Agreement 2006, and the decisions from the Constituent Assembly disregarded the people's participation, though it is democratic in a way, and failed to recognize the Nepali character and Nepalese behavior. So to put this together, if you look at as what is the national state of affairs, one is the political compulsions that were put together. Second is the diplomatic feebleness, and the third is the economically fragile, and the fourth is the population feeling insecure. Therefore, the instruments as well as the sources of national power, whether it is security, domestic, regional, or international, the political landscape, the democratic approach, the satisfied population, effective military capabilities, information, economy, the national power was undermined. So this has been a background or a backdrop where we are today. And the election that took place recently, and the government and the formation of the government is, I believe, under stress and does not really have a strategic outlook for the stability and prosperity in Nepal, nor does it have outlook of how it should go about. Let me give you two examples. One is Prachanda yesterday said in open that he would not expect the parties in the administration to speak against the spirit of the constitutions. If they desire to stay on, this is the starting of the differences that exists strongly in the ideological, which will lead to divergent political paths, though they are together in or for power and for political space. And the second is the self-immolation by Prem Acharya in front of the parliament building yesterday. The Kathmandu mayor, a popular person who received a great mandate and has a vision to get Kathmandu reformed, said, quote, "This individual ultimately takes the drastic step of self-immolation in front of the parliament building. We are failing as citizens, elected people's representatives, leaders, and the media. We don't have a courage to act with integrity and make necessary changes as the people's representatives. There is a fear amongst politicians of speaking out against injustices for the fear of not being re-elected," unquote.
So what you're telling me is that the fissures within this government are perhaps early signs are there. So what impact could this have on their domestic program? Whether it is getting the economy right or getting, a development work underway. How is this going to impact on their domestic policy?
Okay. So as you are framing the questions, I think the catchphrase that I would like to address would be domestic policy and how that would play. So Nepal, just celebrated its 64th parliamentary day in June 2022. And it was a practice over like 6 decades. But what they observed is one, not being democratic, two, effectual, three, valuable, nor successful. So Nepal's democracy actually lacks participatory of eligible voters. Two, it lacks acceptance of geopolitical confronts. It lacks financial transparency, together by the state, the political parties, and the individuals. So this remains as a challenge to the political system, the governance approach, and the electoral system, and the political parties accepting. So this has been a general mood of the electorates, like when they came for the elections, you see. But we should not forget that Nepal has witnessed 59 heads of government in 62 years.
Yeah.
And 13 in 14 years post CPA, post the, the comprehensive agreement. And the Maoist-led People's War persisted 10 years, and the constitution was delivered after 7 years, guaranteeing a secular federal republic, but which I think is under threat.
So, given this situation, one of the things that struck me when I was in Nepal just ahead of the elections is the lack of outreach to young people by all the parties. No outreach to young people, no outreach to women who make up such a significant part of the electorate. What accounts for this?
One is the transformation that the political parties were trying to take. So what happened was, I think the political leadership today were trying to find a space for the second generation of political leaders. So federation was introduced. But actually, Suriji, what I really see is not a federation that the people need. People need, and the political leaders in the local governance system needs decentralization. They want their municipalities, they want their wards to be self-efficient. They want the resources that is garnered from their locality so that they can use at least 30-40% for the needs of the people, so that they can guarantee and they can be proud that they are elected members of the local community. So this is what actually is the reality. But suddenly we see systems coming into Nepal, which, you like it or not, it was not a people's participatory, though it was a it went through the democratic process from the Constituent Assembly election. But as I told you earlier, does this own Nepal's character? Does this own Nepalese behavior?
Okay, now let's move from here to a little sort of an external dimension to the Nepal policy. How do you see this government deal with China? How do you see this government deal with India?
I have to be as frank as I have been so far.
Absolutely, sir.
And Nepal comes first.
Absolutely.
So first, I think it is a matter of understanding the divergence in the ideological belief and assume where this can lead to dealing with China and India. So it is that ideological belief, because we cannot live away from how the world is moving. One of the things that we have to inculcate is it is democracy versus totalitarianism or communism. That is there to stay. It is there to come. And it is not there just to come now. It was there in a different continent in the Cold War. And if we term it that Cold War 2.0 has begun, it is in our continent. It is in South Asia. and it is in our borders. So we have to see this. So, I mean, one. The second is like when Prachanda claims that this coalition administration is a national government, which I argue. And because, I mean, though he received like 97% win over, it's not a win over for the Maoist. It's more acquiring a political space for the Nepali Congress and the UML and the new parties that have joined the government. The Nepal Swatantra Party and the Rashtra Prajatantra Party, who have their own agendas. And one thing is, both of them are against federalism. And one of the parties, RPP, is for a return of the Hindu state and the return of the monarchy. And it is also about the confusion. So this leads to the confusion about the approach with both China and India. Okay. So so this raises a big question. If elections are merely a tool to remain in power, look at the electoral alliance, Surajit. Look what happened. Can you believe a political party that came into power with ballots, belief on ballots, could coincide with a political party that believed on bullets? But they came together. For what? So the question is again, is it just to come in power? Or is it to serve the nation? And again, raises an argument, the geopolitical factors in Nepal's election. So let me come to the diplomatic converse now. So the ideological compulsions will continue with the support of the confidence in the party. So the likelihood of the weak prime minister, I see Prachanda as a weak prime minister and a strong supporter from the other parties is viable. Second is Prachanda is observed impatient, not only from a coalition administration with the Nepali Congress, in addition to face up to the elections with an alliance with the Nepali Congress, but even to head the government with the rival, the UML. So this raises the questions of his despondency, leading to giving away to signing unwanted treaties and agreements with friendly nations opposed to Nepal's national interest. So the viability is there. And the third point that I would like to raise now is China opened the long-standing border crossing demand. We talk about blockades, the unofficial blockades from India, but do we talk about the unofficial blockade that is happening from the north when the borders were closed? We do not. But it was happening. But they opened it when this government came. And they also claimed in the Prime Minister's presence Pokhara International Airport as part of the BRI project. When BRI didn't even exist when the Pokhara International Airport was decided. And a team of Beijing arrived to revisit the feasibility of Trans-Himalayan Railway project. Okay, so this is a gesture giving the importance to the communist-led government so that things are put aside. But one thing is, Suraj, I always wonder, imagination never ends, but politics, economics, and interests have limitations. So imagining a train coming through the Himalayas to Kathmandu, I mean, yes, it is a nice thing to write about. It's a nice thing to think about. But so what is the feasibility study about? Okay. But I mean, I'm trying to be very practical. And the other point that I would like to raise is the geopolitical factor of big powers' interest, particularly China and India. So Nepal in the next 5 years will witness President Xi as more powerful, and the likelihood of India getting back a more capable BJP. When the United States President Biden is moderate, and the European Union engaged with their own problems. So the political cohesion will be at its peak when Nepal will be miscapacitated or incapacitated without its unified national interests, and foreign policy. So this is where the problem lies. Okay. So until and unless, like Nepal has a united foreign policy, or we abide by foreign policy, political parties' foreign policy or their saying of what the policy is, I mean, it will lead to the risk for Nepal's stability also. So, I mean, if you look at Prachanda, he talked with the ABC channel. No, it's not ABC, it's ABP channel in India. And he said, quote, "I will visit wherever the first invitation comes from. I had a conversation with the Indian Foreign Secretary. I think my first foreign visit will be from India," unquote. So a few observations. So unreal alliance when Nepali Congress came through ballots and the Maoist through bullets. Second, big powers competing in Nepal through political parties. Third, disinformation, misleading the people of Nepal is another factor that ruins our relationship. And this is in particular with India-Nepal relationship and with India, with Nepal and the democratic nations relationship. And the fourth is China. What is China's concern in Nepal? So one would be the geopolitical theory south of the Himalayas, or the BRI, and for the central Himalayan region where Nepal, Sikkim, and Bhutan lies, it is strategic connectivity. And the second is keep in check the United States and their friends or the Europeans' assistance or influence aimed against China. For example, the MCC. Why was there so much disinformation when Nepal's resources and the grant money was being used to develop Nepal's economy, to take in advantage of Nepal? And MCC was nothing wrong, you know. I mean, but look at the disinformation and the impression that gave to the people. The other is China's main interest and concerns is over Tibet. And they increased its diplomatic maneuvering through economic ties, trade, FDI, one of the highest in Nepal now, and tourism and contacts through visits. So Nepal, actually what happens is when you see the policymakers, I mean, they look either to China or either to India, whichever it is there for survival, maintaining a balanced relationship. And China and India remains Nepal's critical and main components of foreign power or foreign policy.
Okay. So since you say that the government will play a balancing act, in your view, do you think the Chinese have played their cards better in terms of getting their kind of the Reds together on one platform? Or has India played its cards worse or didn't play them at all?
I mean, this is a very good question, Suryaji. Now, I mean, before going to the depth of the question, let me say, what is the relationship between the Nepal Communist Party or the Nepal Communists, who are now two parties or maybe three parties, four parties, and the Communist Party of China? Okay, so this began in September 2019, and the brotherly relationship between the two Communist Party was signed with the 6 MOUs between the Nepal Communist Party Foreign Department and the Chinese Communist Party. And then the Prime Minister Oli and his comrade Prachanda both were present. And they stressed on two things. One is one China policy, and the second is seize thoughts of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era.
Okay.
But again, this communist alliances fragmented in 2021 March. So I mean, but I see the hope of consolidating again. Because China's approach, one, is the alliances with the communist forces, to continue the alliance with communist forces, to engage with the democratic forces, and third, they find a way to work with the whichever government exists in place. So that is the strategy. I mean, and the aim behind their thinking, that I assume, one is, United States actions and activities against Tibetan issues. This was on float, particularly after the Undersecretary of the US, Uzra Jayal, visited, who looked after Tibetan issues also. Second, they refresh themselves on the unity amongst the left. Third is reiterate China's interest in activities that is against China. So when we are looking at China from that angle, how they see Nepal, let me also tell you about how India is looked into. So India's eyes in Nepal is growing on China's influence. One. Second, the people-to-people relationship, the cultural, traditional practices is the foundation of our special bond. Third is the extra-regional powers, political actions, and economic dealings that contradicts Nepal-India traditional ties in the new geopolitical realities. So this is, I think, how we should see our relationship going forward in the new era, or when things are changing, not just in South Asia, but in the Indo-Pacific region. So what I personally feel is, I think Nepal should gear up on trying to find a Nepal's way of moving forward, rather than being a playground and following what others want you to do. But I'll tell you, Suji, the parliament, the elected body today, somehow or the other, I was talking about the geopolitical factor. I do not expect too many things happening, keeping Nepal at the center of how it should be. Because of the financial dealings that has been happening, which have come out in papers, and which do not have so much of a proof, but dealings are there. Dealings are there not just for an individual, for almost every candidate that goes on a likely to win. So there is somehow or the other some sort of attachment amongst the people, amongst the politicians who represent this country. But as long as this is not sufficed with a united foreign policy that stands for Nepal and the Nepalese, and the changes that is going to happen in the future, and also making sure that the values of democracy is garnered by the system we have, then we will not. I do not see things moving in the right track. So this coming 5 years would not be as easy as we envisioned, because election happened, and so I don't think it would also be like, oh yes, the elections happened, the democratic paradigm, but democracy is not just elections. Democracy is something that you garner so that the country and the people, the beneficiaries, are satisfied and happy, and the country's image is uplifted.
Both of which are yet to happen. General Basnyat, pleasure again talking to you, sir. Let's hope, the next 5 years will be full of uncertainties. Certainly, sitting here in India, and when we look at Nepal, that those uncertainties somehow seem to, grow and grow. But nevertheless, it's a learning curve, I presume. Nepali politicians are also learning as they go forward. And hopefully, there'll be light on the horizon. There always is. So thank you very much for your time, and pleasure as always talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sujit. Thank you for having me, and namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those of you who joined us on this conversation, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram. Thank you and good night.